the most dominant postseason run in all of team sports every year since 2000. And I say team sports because 2000 could very well be Tiger Woods winning by 15 strokes at the 2000 US Open at Pebble Beach, but it would probably be the 2000 Ravens regardless. The Ravens played in 4 playoff games in 2000. They outscored their opponents 96-20, and they somehow only let up 1 offensive touchdown. We'll never see anything like that again. The 2001 Lakers would have been the first NBA team to ever finish the postseason undefeated, but Allen Iverson turned into a cosmic entity and stole an overtime game in the finals. The Spurs won 58 games in 2001, and the Lakers swept them with an average margin of victory of 22 points per game. 2002's the Tampa 2 Buccaneers, who outscored their opponents 106-37. It's hard to compare any defense to the 2000 Ravens defense, but this Bucs defense was incredibly close, and their offense was probably better. 2003, the answer is the Australian national cricket team, not because I know anything about cricket, but because nobody else was dominant. This was an extremely competitive year. The Pats' playoff run was super close, same with the Spurs and the Marlins. The Stanley Cup Finals went to Game 7. College football had the most controversial season probably ever. They awarded 2 national champions. College basketball wasn't really like a runaway from Syracuse. I mean, everything was close this year. Even the Masters went into a playoff. AC Milan in the Champions League was not dominant at all. Australia's cricket team, however, was the first ever cricket team to go a perfect 11-0 in the Cricket World Cup, and they beat India in the final by 125 runs, which apparently is unprecedented. The 2004 Pistons allowed only 80.7 points per game. They won 11 games by double digits. At one point, they held the Nets to 56 points in the East semis. Their opponent shot under 40% 12 times this postseason, which is an NBA record, and they dismantled the Lakers as one of the biggest underdogs in NBA Finals history. 2005 is the White Sox. They went 11-1 in the postseason. They allowed less than 3 runs per game, which is insane. But far and away, the most impressive thing from this entire run is what the White Sox starting pitchers did. Look at the ALCS. Their starters pitched 44 1/3 innings out of a possible 45 innings. Their bullpen only got 2 outs over an entire series. For 2006, I had no choice but to go with UVA Lacrosse, not a team that I know much about, but I have been assured that they do deserve to be on this list. Now, I will say that Florida basketball was very close, and Florida football would have 100% been the pick had college football had anything resembling a postseason back then, because they destroyed Ohio State. But in my opinion, none of these champs were dominant enough, so we're going with 06 UVA Lacrosse. 2007's the Red Sox, because to this day, they still have the highest playoff point differential of all time. 2008 Red Wings weren't historically dominant necessarily, but it's very hard to be dominant in the Stanley Cup playoffs considering how chaotic it always is. The craziest stat here is that Johan Franzen in the West semis outscored Colorado single-handedly. I almost gave the nod to the US Olympic swim team, but it feels like maybe that was just Michael Phelps, and that's an individual, so he doesn't count. 2009, super easy, UNC basketball, one of the greatest college basketball teams I've ever laid my eyes on. Tyler Hansbrough, Ty Lawson, Wayne Ellington, Danny Green. They steamrolled everybody. Fun fact, they have the 2nd highest point differential in an NCAA tournament ever, behind a team that may or may not be mentioned later. All of the 2010 champions kind of had to grind for success. None of these teams deserve to be on the list, so I had to dig deep again, which is where I found the 2010 Boston College hockey team that was honestly historically dominant. They won the final 5-0, and they won the semifinal 7-1. They never trailed, and statistically, they have the largest point differential in Frozen Four history, which is insane. 2011 is Tiki Taka Barcelona, one of the greatest soccer teams to ever grace our earth. They destroyed Shakhtar in the quarters, they beat Madrid 3-1 in the semis, and they beat Man U 3-1 in the final. None of those games were ever in doubt. 2012 is the LA Kings, who went 10-1 on the road. They never trailed in a series, 16-4 overall in the postseason. It's crazy to think that the Kings actually could have swept the postseason because they went up 3-0 in every single round and let their foot off the gas because they could. Jonathan Quick had an all-time playoff run alone. He's kind of the reason that the Kings are here. He was possessed the entire postseason. I think he allowed 1.3 goals per game. 2013 is tough because the Seahawks weren't statistically dominant until they manhandled the Broncos in the Super Bowl. But it would feel wrong not to pick this team. Plus, nobody else really deserved it. And on top of that, even in their close games, they had this aura of dominance, like you were never going to win anyway. 2014 is the San Antonio Spurs, who in my opinion played the most beautiful brand of basketball of all time. They set the playoff point differential record at the time, they beat the Heat by an average of like 18 points per game in the finals. They beat the Blazers by 20 points per game in the West semis, and even though the Thunder got 2 games on them, they still beat them by an average of 21 points per game. Insane. And then the 2015 Warriors, who pretty easily had the most dominant postseason run of this year, even though this Warriors team wasn't as dominant as future Warriors teams. It's genuinely crazy to me that just because of a national championship game buzzer beater, people believe that 2018 Villanova had a more dominant postseason run than 2016 Villanova. That is statistically incorrect. Even if you take away the championship game, in Villanova's other 5 games in 2016, they had a point differential of plus 121, which would be the 3rd largest of all time. They beat Oklahoma in the Final Four in one of the most dominant ways you'll ever see. I think they went on like a 34-2 run. This team was unbelievable. 2017 is obviously the Warriors. This is and probably always will be the most dominant postseason run in NBA history. They went 16-1 in the playoffs and won 12 games by double digits. They actually started the playoffs 15-0 and could have swept the entire thing. But, you know, LeBron's not going to let that happen. 2018, our first college football team, and we're going to see more because this era was insane for college football. All you need to know is that the media could not stop glazing this Alabama team. They were saying it was the best Alabama team Nick Saban had ever had. They had infinite Pro Bowlers, and I was not afraid at all because this Clemson team was that good. They boat raced Notre Dame in the semis by 27, then they beat that stacked Alabama team by 28 in the Natty, and if we're counting conference championship games as postseason games in college football, Clemson won theirs by 32. But if there's a team that very well could actually be better than 2018 Clemson, it's definitely 2019 LSU. They were up by 50 at one point in the semifinals against Oklahoma. There's nothing you could do to stop them. Offensively, they were as much of a juggernaut as I've ever seen any team be in any sport. 2020 is Bayern Munich, and honestly, a super easy choice. Look at what they did to Barcelona. They made them look like children. Fun fact, to this day, they're the only team to ever win the Champions League without losing a single game. 2021 Baylor gets the nod, considering I'm a college basketball guy, and this team made me feel things that I was not used to feeling. They had a plus 75 point differential going into the Natty, which is incredible even if it's not necessarily historic. But the first 10 minutes of the national championship really cemented their place on this list. The game was over before it even started. Now, you might think that 2022 is a lock to beat Georgia because of the evil things they did to poor little TCU in the national championship game, but they did objectively need a miracle to beat Ohio State the game before, and this video is about dominant postseason runs, so we can't count Georgia. So the actual answer are the Avs, because they went 16-4 in the Stanley Cup playoffs and are regarded as one of the most dominant postseason Stanley Cup teams ever. 2023 UConn has the 4th largest point differential in March Madness history. They are one of the most dominant teams to ever exist in college basketball, but what makes this absolutely insane is the fact that 2024 UConn was like 10 times more dominant. They had a point differential of plus 140, which is obviously a record. They won 6 games in a row by an average of 23.5 points. And just the simple fact that out of all of the sports in the world, nobody was more dominant than UConn back-to-back years. 2025, I went with Indiana football. I know the national championship was close, but what they did to Alabama and Oregon was so unholy, they deserve to be on this list. And then lastly, as of right now, the 2026 representative would be the New York Knicks. They've won 11 straight games and have a postseason point differential of plus 271, which is objectively the craziest stat we've ever seen.